me, okay. Perfect. Okay, how do I get myself in here? Hello, everybody.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Thank you. We are sort of winging it this in that our technology was not quite what we had hoped for. So, Sheree, is it possible for me to see everybody who's participating? Sheree is here on her day off, hoping to, oh, perfect, helping us and hoping to help us. Okay. Thank you so much for attending. What I want to do, first of all, we're recording, so please be aware of that. I am recording primarily because there was some, last year we had people here at the extension office, and so people spoke over each other. And although I was taking notes furiously, I wasn't very successful at it. So that's why we're recording it, so I'll have a note. What I'd like to do is go through our pre-planning, then, and that would be our vendor relations, our graphics, our advertising, sort of our organization, then go into the sale setup, then talk about the day of the sale. And on each of those topics, I'd like to have a what we did wrong, or what we couldn't do better is a better way to put it, and what we did right. So again, thanks to everybody who is here. We're expecting a couple more people to log in, and hopefully they'll join us shortly. Can everyone hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much.
I can hear you.
Okay, so we started off this year a little differently in that we wanted to have a checklist and to have a time frame. And so I'd like to start by getting everybody's opinion about, was the checklist helpful? Did the check-in meetings help? What could we do differently on the checklist? Or if you'd like to talk about something else entirely, please bring that up too.
I think a checklist was helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did everybody feel like the checklist had a pretty good idea of what their jobs were and when they needed to be done?
Yeah, we modified it. I mean,
Yes.
we flexed with it, so I thought it was good. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad that worked. I'm looking for something to
I
put
think
this
the
on.
timeline kept us moving, so we didn't get swept up with so much at the very end.
Good, okay. And what about the check-in meetings? I think that one of the things we learned was we only needed the people who had items due that week to check in. So there was no reason to have the entire planning committee check in every check-in meeting. It was just the people who had work to do. And of y'all, I see only myself, Bonnie and Marcia were the only people who had things to do on the checklist. So excuse me while we just talk about this and get on to the rest of the things.
Well, I think the meetings were important to keep the checklist moving
Okay,
because that's where we did that's where we adapted the plan. You know, you went to contact somebody and you couldn't reach them or whatever. So, yeah.
right. Right. Well, and I know I miss deadlines on a regular basis, and fortunately, Tricia was kind enough to float with my, she floated with me. So that was helpful because I had deadlines I missed to give her stuff.
This is Trisha. I think the
Oh,
checklist
hi,
was,
Tricia.
hi, it says Patricia. That's probably why but it's my alias.
Yes.
It was helpful to remember what needed to be done.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was very helpful to stay on track.
Okay, good. And yes, that is the alias, Patricia. That is the alias. So that's good to know. Okay. And thank you for attending. Okay, Annette has joined us. And so Annette, can you scoochie over closer to me maybe?
Oh.
We couldn't get the computer organized properly.
Oh.
Oh, maybe you could. That'd be great if you can get on your phone. Okay. All right. Okay. Good. Now, vendor relations. Anything else in terms of our pre-planning work that anybody wants to say anything about? Okay.
I think it was, we used one of those, we tried to do a couple of those meetings to check out the venue because we found ourselves talking about different things.
Right.
And so my suggestion is that we get that venue pinned down and that visit early on so that we don't spend so much time talking about people having different orientations of the room and misremembering this and misremembering that. And, there were just different opinions
Well, and
to how it looked. So
because,
I don't care what, I'm just saying it should be, if we could do that, get that pinned down early and make that visit early with the entire steering committee so that everyone's on the same page.
right. Christine, Cherie told me that you were working on that.
Yeah, unfortunately, the state fair is going through a lot of changes as everybody else is. They're shorthanded everywhere. And the person that normally did the reservations left, and they don't have anyone in that position right now. They're also doing a lot of construction all over the fairgrounds. So buildings may or may not be available at certain times. I'm not even going to be able to reserve it until after the state fair, but I plan to reserve the building ASAP as soon as we can after state fair when they have a new person in that position to take reservations.
Okay, and I think what's important.
Oh, you went on mute, Catherine.
Catherine, you went away. Christine, tell her she went away.
Yeah, Catherine, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Let me run in there. Hold on just a second. Hi.
Okay, so there we go. All right. Yes, Marcia.
They have.
Yeah, and I just was afraid I wouldn't get them. No, we're by the deadline. And I don't need a witness, do I?
Okay, all right. So we're going to try to get Mary Ann on this. Okay, thank you. All right, so can you mute your sound? Or turn it down? It's the feedback.
The
They
extended
didn't have feedback unless they go to different rooms.
Your sound. Turn it way down. Okay. Okay, Marcia, I'm sorry, it's so crazy over here. What are the buildings we want? That's what we need to tell Christine.
All right. We want either the Colorado or the Fine Arts. Both of those have worked really well. They're handicap accessible. They do have restrooms fairly close. There's, you can arrange ins and outs, go in the front
Next time
door
on
of
a
the Colorado
meeting.
building and out the side
Extension.
door.
May I help you?
Fine arts, go in the front and out the back. These
Yes.
two
Is this
have
Mary
not
Ann?
been
Excuse me,
available
Marcia,
To NG, I'm
because
emailing you the Zoom. link right
construction,
now.
so I,
Catherine,
Yes.
can you mute yours when you're not talking? Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Marcia.
Let's see if this is the same one.
okay. These two might be more available now because they have been doing construction in that area, and hopefully that will be over and Christine can get one of those buildings for us. Because they are, one of the arguments is they are more handicapped accessible than the Ag Palace, and things just look better in those two. Got a little less room to have to mess with. And you can set things up and they just look a lot better. But so Christine, if you can get one of those buildings for us, and I know October is has been traditionally the meeting date that the extension office meets with the state fair to set the calendar. So let's hope that we can get one of those, and and they're easier. Well, being able to drive into the Ag Palace, that was helpful for vendors, but it's just as easy to back into one of those buildings too.
Okay, so Christine, you've made a note that the buildings we want are the Colorado or the Fine Arts Building, with the full understanding that we might not be able to actually get those two.
Okay, and Colorado is your number one choice,
Marcia?
Yes.
and then Fine Arts is number two. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well,
And the Ag Palace is a distant three.
Okay, got it.
We have a visitor today who is sharing our phone connections here in the office. And this is Mark, and Mark is one of the community garden members and is interested in participating in Shed. So he could get a look at us up close. I invited him to attend this meeting. So he says hello.
Catherine, what's his last name?
Montoya.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. We're recording this meeting. Good, so what we've covered, we've talked about the pre-planning, we've talked about the need to reserve the building. We've talked about the challenges Christine is facing in trying to reserve the building. And Christine, do you have a main contact over there?
At this moment, I don't have a contact because that person quit. So we are,
Right, okay.
yeah, waiting for
May I
them to
ask who quit, just so I know not to email them?
I'm sorry, Adele was the one that quit.
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
This
Adele
is-
quit.
This is Trisha, and I
Okay.
have a new contact for you if you
Until-
want it.
Oh, great.
Um,
Has this person been hired, Tricia?
she has started.
Oh, super.
Yeah.
Okay.
Her name is
Sorry,
Callie.
Marianne, I'm trying to listen on the call.
Her name is Callie Massar, CALLIE MASAR. And
I
that's,
don't
And do you have her title by any chance?
I don't know what her title, it's the same as Adele's, probably rental, events rental or something like that. Her email is her name or her first name, period, her last name at state.co.us.
Great, thank you. We'll probably send that out to, well, I guess Christine, you're the main person who needs it. So were you able to get the spelling on Kelly's name? Callie or Kelly?
Callie.
Callie, thank you.
I'm sorry, Catherine, I'm still on the phone with Mary Ann, so I'm very distracted out here, so
Sure,
I'll have to get
sure,
back with you in
okay.
just a minute.
Okay, yeah, we'll
Thank
get
you.
back on that.
I apologize.
Okay, so I think that covers us for our pre-planning. A key element of our pre-planning is the invitation to participate and getting contracts out. And Marcia, you were our main point of contact on that. Did you feel like that worked for you, or how could we improve that? Marcia? Hello, Marcia? Okay, Marcia seems to have frozen up. So what we did this year, Marcia? Marcia is frozen. So what we did this year was we sent out an invitation to participate, and we went ahead and attached to that invitation the contract itself. We requested that the vendor tell us what size plant materials they were bringing and what they were going to charge for those plant materials. I'm not sure that we got even one piece of paper back with that information. Marcia, do you recall if we got anything back on plant sales, what people were going to bring? Marcia, you're on mute. Okay, she's obviously having.
I'm having technical difficulty. When you have to work on a hotspot, it's just glitchy. Yes, because I found out, well, we found out from Kata and from Mark what they were bringing. But I think as soon as we find out what building we tentatively have, I can do it yet this year. Send out an invitation and a notice to people, because I'd like to get Sunscapes and Jeff Ottersberg. Is that Sunscapes? Anyway, the two growers here that sometimes participate, sometimes don't. So I'd like to see if I could encourage them to plan ahead and include us. Catherine, you're on mute.
Thank you. What we heard last year from Perennial Harvest was that they start making their plans for what they're going to grow in September. That's when they start placing their, late September, they start placing their orders for plugs, which is, they order the plugs from, and then the plugs get sent to them and then they grow them out. So whereas we may think that in January, we're all, that's a lot of time to plan. In fact, we're already 3 months behind the vendor schedule at that point. So
I thought that the vendors needed to be contacted in October, but maybe we better back that up to September.
I think we need to back that up to September 15th. So it looks like what I need to do is start putting together a 2023 checklist timeline.
Right.
Okay. All right. He goes on.
Okay. One other comment. I don't think we should contact State Fair as shed until Christine gives us a go ahead that she has somebody someplace nailed down for us, because it's called line of command or channel of command. Extension is the one that pays for the state fair on an annual basis and sets up the calendar, and we need to be careful of not interfering with that. MJ had a chat with me.
Well, it is confusing. And so, yes, to the extent that we can ask Christine to help us out and get things done and smooth the way, we definitely need to do that. In terms of
Well-
direct coordination with the state fair, like with the days that we can go on the walkthroughs, that's,
Yeah, that's after the calendar's set and we have a place. Then I think Christine can give us the go-ahead to do some direct contact. But until that time, I think we might accidentally create problems for ourselves.
I think that's a good point, Marcia, especially since they are going to be under construction for a lot of the year. I think Colorado Building was in the middle of construction in 2020, which is why we went to the Ag Palace to start with. I don't know about the Colorado Room, if they're planning upgrades to that, but they probably are. So we'll put,
Um,
we'll put
Because,
Chris-
yeah, because extension is one, and if we want to stay under the umbrella of extension and not have to pay for this building, we need to be careful how we approach this, because they tackled MJ about were we actually part of extension, or could they charge it?
okay, well, we certainly don't want them to charge us. Okay,
Correct.
so we're going to put our invitations to participate. I'm thinking this year was our last year to have perennial favorites, and I'm wondering if what we need to include in our vendor invitation to participate is what plants we want people to grow.
Well.
I like them making their own decisions.
Yes, I think if we tell them that they're gonna go, well, fine, scratch. Like said Jeff and, who's the other one? Sunscapes and the other ones that they grow only native type plant. So, and a lot of people have been looking for them and asking for them, so
Okay,
I really want to encourage them. I'll work on the logo on a card if you want to do it, or if you want me to do it. I'll work on a logo on a card so while you're having fun away, and see what we get.
okay.
So
Is that
it's
something
official.
that Tricia might help on? Marcia, do you want Tricia to try to put together something? Do we have
Well, I was going to put together our logo on the front of a card, like you'd write a thank you on or something, a small card, and
that is a lovely idea.
rather than a letter that looks so official.
I'm happy to help with any design stuff that's needed.
Okay. Thanks, Tricia.
I love the idea of a card. That's going to get much better eyes contact than we would have with a letter. That's a terrific idea, Marcia. Thank you. Okay. Graphics. We really benefited from Tricia's expertise and involvement this year, partly because we had a flyer that was much better and much higher digital resolution than we had the year before. So again, Tricia, thank you so much for your work on that. And we also did things a little differently with our signage. We had signage at the table on the pricing. Some of the feedback we got in 21 from buyers was that they couldn't find the pricing, even though we thought it was evident that the prices were posted on the columns. No one was looking at the columns, they were looking at the plants. So, do we need any other graphic support besides the flyers and the?
This is Annette. There's kind of feedback here, so it's a little distracting, but I feel that there was a lack of signage on the plants. For instance, Dr. Bartoli's poppers, no one knew what those were. They knew the price, but there was nothing. And you know, the year before we'd had all those special things about the new Pueblo popper. I think all of the tables need to be a little bit more specific about what's there, especially since part of our mission is horticulture education. And so I don't know. I mean, maybe we can't do it for the vendors, but at least for the Master Gardener items, there should be accompanying what the name of the plant is, and possibly even some things about the care of the plants. But especially like the one that stood out for me were the Pueblo poppers. Like people, they didn't sell and no one knew what they were. They were 6-packs, they were a good deal. And they were special, but they didn't sell.
I think one of the things that we benefited from in 21, which we didn't have in 22, were the little signs that were stuck in pots that Orla did. And we have the signs. What we don't have is the personnel or the staff or the volunteers to get the plants labeled. And so that was a simple matter of, I think that was a logistics issue rather than needing necessarily more signage. I mean, we need the sign to be on the table, not in the box behind the counter. So maybe that's a matter of volunteering. And I think the whole issue of volunteer coordination, as all of you know, I was going into spasms of fear because we had so few people signed up. So I think we need to continue to do a better job in terms of recruiting people in advance. And maybe that starts with an invitation, also a card or something like that, to the people who participated this year, inviting them to participate again next year. Because
Are we going to talk about volunteer now, or is that somewhere else?
yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the volunteers now.
I'd like to back up onto the signage, you know,
Okay.
as when you go through to do the pricing, and if we had pretty reasonable lines this year, but if we could, when there's another stick in the pot, it's very difficult. People pull out into the price sheet the thing and they discover later that they had the name of the plant, they don't have the price stick. And so what I said, you know, people often bring more than one of a thing, you know, if they were all grouped together, and then one of the table volunteers would just keep making sure, because people will move them around, that we kind of move them back to, you know, like we move them back to their vendor table, let's move them back kind of. So if you have a bunch of mums there, all the mums are clustered together with a sign that says mums. Okay. That might help with the nets thing without labeling each pot an issue.
I think a lot of people that attend it, they're going to want something in the pot or on the pot because they don't know all these different leaves. Or I mean, I even as a master gardener, a lot of time really want to know and have signage that says what that particular pot had in it. But I do agree that we could have some signage on the tables, which we did a little bit the year before. I did some signs online, but the other thing we might want to do is ask the master gardeners specifically what kind of plants they're going to bring, like a general which we haven't
Yeah.
done, you know,
Yeah.
like for house plants or other things like that. If we have known in advance, then we can plan in advance. If we knew like a month before, they don't have to say, I'm gonna bring 3 spider plants or something. They can just say, these are the things I'm bringing. And we could have some general signs for the table. And then ask them once again, and we can't ensure they'll do it, but ask them to put like a popsicle stick or something in there that says what it is,
Well,
or
actually,
something, a label.
well, I
Maybe we
think
could
it's a
provide
piece of-
labels to people.
Yeah, I
and-
think a label for people, if and even if they do it at the time of the show and they go to drop off their spider plants, just a little piece of tape that says spider plant on it would be very helpful. I know I labeled all the plants that I brought. I just know it's so frustrating to see all these unlabeled plots standing around, sitting around. You know, I wanted people to know this was a ginger plant, you know, this is something, you know, whatever it is.
Marcia?
2 things. I think it is okay to ask the master gardeners what they're bringing and to label them. We asked the vendors that participate with us what to label each pot. And I don't know that we did that with those. The other thing is, Orla has this vast knowledge of all plants plus native. She wasn't available to come in and help label like she did the year before. And she's usually been our go-to person to put up the sign, you know, xeric or low water or what they are and how from that box. And maybe we could invite her to come in and do that and assign 1 or 2 people to go with her to help her get it out quickly.
So I assume that would be done on Thursday.
Whatever
Or
day
Friday.
the plants are already there so that they can be ID'd a little more from our box of labels and
I think we had, this time, we had a couple of challenges. One
Yeah.
was that we bought plants from Crite and they were not labeled yet. So usually we require that each pot have a label in it. And Crite's didn't have labels in theirs. So that's part of the fact that Chris and I were at Crite's pulling and we didn't make sure that they had labels. Then there's people like Dan who doesn't have access to professional labels or CATA. And so that means all of those have to be hand labeled. And that's, I think, just going to continue to be a challenge in terms of getting labels on plants.
well, if
With
CATA
Mr. Bar-
comes next year, we need to reiterate that each pot needs a label in it so that people will know what they're getting, because she had a plethora of varieties of tomatoes.
In
You
the
know,
past,
up at Good Earth, they have the a listing of all the tomato varieties and what's special about them. So it's a master list that's on the tables. Maybe we can figure out some way to do something like that. Because Kat always knows what she's growing. And Dan knows what she's growing. So maybe that's the solution. Or at least part
Anna
of
in
the
the
solution.
past has had some, I wasn't over by her tables while she was there, but she's had signs of, you know, what kind of tomato is, and like my idea of just the clustering around. She's done that in the past and it's always been very helpful, even when she wasn't, you know, at the table, like off to the restroom or something at the time I came by.
Right. And with her being there the whole time, people were able to ask her and talk to her and she has quite a following of people that come and get her plants. So,
Well, I think that we can improve our signage on plant labeling. That's what we need to have to say about that. Okay. Anything else on vendors, Marcia? I'm sorry, on vendors and it.
no, we'll get an invitation out and see what kind of response we get.
Okay,
Would it be inappropriate to put a little postcard in there that we used to do this with Market Stockdale? I don't know if Christine remembers or not. When we sent out letters for people to participate in purchasing animals, we put a card in and it said, I am planning on attending, or I won't be able to attend this year. And they popped it back in the mail and they came into the extension office and we go through, Barbara and I go through and figure out who was coming and who wasn't. Would it be inappropriate to put a card in that said, I'm looking forward to participating in the plant sale? Or
I think that's an interesting idea. So we'd have the card,
Think on
just
it.
like this normal invitation, then we'd have the postcard inside that was stamped and addressed to extension, and all you would do is check one of the 3 boxes, like you can count on me, or I hope to, or no go. Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying, Marcia?
yes, yes,
Okay.
precisely.
Okay.
The rest of you, how do you feel about that? Mary, you were in California. How did they handle some of this?
Actually, we never did a plant sale in
Oh,
California.
okay,
Yeah, Sacramento, we never did, yeah.
new ground.
We sold grapes during the one big function that we had in August. We sold grape cuttings and berry cuttings sometimes, but that was about it. Yeah. So I don't have any experience gleaned in California to help out with.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
That cuttings are cool.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. We have so many cool ideas. We just don't have the ability to implement some of them, like doing our fall bulb sale. Okay.
Sorry, just real quick, one idea about the pricing and plants that we've been discussing. In the moment, it came to me, like, for example, when I go to get a rock or a gem or crystal from a local shop, they will just have pre-made labels already printed. So when I go get a tourmaline or something, they will just have a piece of paper pre-printed, and then on the back of that has the properties of that crystal or mineral and what it does for us. So I think applying that to plants, let's say we have our jalapeno plants not labeled with the sticks, but if the vendor already knows what they are selling, when somebody purchases that plant, they could just pull out a pre-printed piece of paper with the name of the plant, and then on the back of that with some of the care instructions. So that's just an idea that we could potentially do. That might, hopefully reduce some time and hopefully some of the plastic waste as well from the sticks themselves.
Sticks are reused.
I think that's an interesting idea of having something you can take, because it would be very helpful to do that. I'm not sure how we would get that information in people's hands. Normally, there's not much of a conversation between a vendor and the buyer. But maybe there's a way that we can integrate that into the signage on the table and maybe
We could possibly have like some cards on the table like is being suggested by Mark, so that, snake plants or I don't know, I guess it wouldn't be tomatoes, but herbs like basil, we could have some for those common type of things that we know there are a lot of. And if we get an idea and we have a specific idea of what we're going to be selling, these are things that could be done like 6 months or 8 months before the sale.
Speaking of that, one of the things that we got a lot at the checkout is people asking us to identify a plant. And I'm just wondering, maybe if we could get an Orla or someone who's pretty good or has a really good plant ID on their phone, if we could get them kind of like in their own little, what plant is this kind of stall? And then people could go there and ask. And so that way we aren't holding up lines while somebody's trying to look up a plant and they're not, then just dropping it off on any random table when they decide they don't want it because they don't know what it is.
Bonnie, could you expand a little bit on your comment about people pulled tags? And sometimes it was the plant name and sometimes it was the price.
Yeah, because some people label on on the white tabs, they write, Valencia orange on it, tree on it. And then, but it's the same tab that we use to indicate the price. And so
is a simple solution to that we ask people to label with white labels and we just never use white labels for pricing?
Well, that's one option. I'm just saying that if we're going to ask them to stick something in the pot, it needs to be like the wooden sticks or something completely different than what we use. Otherwise, we're sitting there pulling tags, and next thing we know, we've got a handful of plant names, and we don't know which pots to put those plant names back in, And so they really, and I mean,
need to be more careful about what they're pulling.
Well, yes, but I want to just tell you that it gets very hectic. And
I know, I used to run that.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to, just like in medicine, they have all kinds of backs and checks, and we just try to do this. I'm just making the suggestion that not that we ask people to be more careful, because that isn't where it's going to remain a problem. I'm asking that we come up with a solution that helps people be more careful.
Can we just replace the sticks with just sticky labels to go on the outside of the pot so we don't have the labels for the plants confused with the sticks? Because Cactus Haven,
I recommend.
Yeah, Cactus Haven did that really well, and they had the sticky labels that went on the outside of all of the pots, and that made it so much easier because we had to put the pricing sticks in on top of those, so they were completely separate items that didn't get confused.
The problem with doing that is that the way that vendors work is they buy 1,000 plant labels that are plastic and that say, begonia repens or whatever it is. And they stick one of those in each of their pots. So if they tried to stick a label on the face of the pot, over the course of watering it as it grows, the labels peel off. So that's why people use plastic labels with a picture on it and all that stuff you get when you buy something from Home Depot or Lowe's. But I like the idea that we would restrict our colors so that it's apparent that one is a plant name and one is a price. And maybe the way to do that is with not using white labels for pricing.
But then we need to require the vendors use white sticks.
Well, if the vendors are using plastic tags, that's.
And sometimes they're using sticks. And I'm just saying, when it's plastic tags, the confusion isn't so great. But when it's sticks, which is not uncommon.
Maybe we need to have a vendor chat so that we talk to each vendor in advance. Because that's one thing that we certainly have not focused on in the past is meeting with vendors once or twice before the plant sale. We've tried to handle everything in writing.
Well, if we know what they're bringing, we could make these labels. If we know they're bringing 20 begonias, we could already have 20 begonia sticky stickers already sitting there waiting to stick on the pots.
But the whole point is that the way that perennial favorites and that Kreitz work is that they bring what is at the top of its bloom cycle. So they bring the most merchantable plants. So until they are pulling plants that week, they have no idea what they're bringing.
And crises are so busy because they grow for so many farmers out on the mesa that if you tell them they have to label each one, we will not have them there. They'll just say, fine.
Yes, that's that
I'm
fine line
saying
of,
that it's a difficulty. We've got a whole bunch of ideas here. And
Why don't we mark that as a item for thought and tackle it.
I mean,
at a
I thought
future
the idea
meeting.
was to kind of get through all the suggestions, but not necessarily to work out solutions to everything
Correct.
that came up.
that's a good point. That's committee work and we don't need to do it here.
Okay,
So I think what we do need to do is, I need to put together a price list and we need to start the process maybe August 15th or September 1st. And we've been
I
saying, we
think the
said
prices
last year,
need to go
we
up.
wanted to, I'm sorry, Marcia?
prices need to go up because they have gone up incrementally at Lowe's and Home and so on. They aren't, this time of year, they should be going down and they're going up.
The pricing is usually done based, don't we get the prices from the vendors before we price? So how can we do this in August if we're not even sending out the invitation
Correct.
until September 15?
Well, but what we could do is if we started doing something in August, we could talk to people like Kay Kreitz and say, how can we best work with you? Can you label things in advance? Can we give you a to-grow list, a contract to grow list? Perennial Favorites is not going to be a vendor next year. And that frankly means we're going to need to probably invest about $4,000 in purchasing or committing to purchase natives from a vendor. It's probably going to be somebody between Colorado Springs and Denver. So it's going to be a bit of a logistical challenge. So we need to start having those.
Well, Catherine, why are we giving
We
them a
have two
to-grow
of them
list?
here.
Why are we giving them a to-grow list? Because we weren't very good ourselves in knowing what to plant.
I'm sorry, I don't
Growing
understand the
is
question.
ticklish.
I was just saying, I mean, give them a list of things to grow, but we decided what to plant out there in the greenhouses, and what we brought back, we had a lot of unsold items. So I'm not sure that we are really on top of what the market is. They sell things all the time.
Right. Well, I think we need to talk some more about that.
Okay.
Because I know what you mean about, and then there's that issue of, well, this year, all the impatiens got some fungus and nobody could get any impatiens. So it doesn't matter if you had a contract to grow impatiens. If they couldn't be bought from a whole, from a breeder, then you couldn't grow them out and sell them. So we just need to do some work on that, but that is committee work. Okay, moving right along. How are we doing? All right, not too good. The day of the sale setup. I think the biggest challenge we had is that or at least from my standpoint, was I made the erroneous assumption that everybody knows how to read a map. And so I had a plan that showed the table layout, and it was 180 degrees from what Chris thought she had said she wanted. So I think that's, again, and just more of an in-person communications. And maybe even we're taping table layouts on the floor or something like that. But we need to have a table layout plan, but people need to be able to read it as well, because Chris was not the only one who could not, who the table layout plan was too technical. It didn't communicate. And as the person who drafted it, it was my job to make a table layout people could read, and I didn't do that. So I need to work on that.
We need a good idea of where all the outlets are before we, or else we need to plan to get battery operated machines.
Okay,
Colorado building, all the outlets are along the walls. There are some on pillars.
Oh, I
When
mean,
we've used that, we put the cash registers near where the outlets were, and that worked okay. Fine arts. I think
it doesn't matter, Marcia. The deal was, I mean, the whole point is we just need to know where they are so we can, in the table layout plan, we plan for cords as well as tables. That's
Yeah,
my,
plenty of cords there.
that's my whole point is some of the things
Well-
have changed because when we went to set up, the outlets weren't exactly where we thought they were. And so
Well,
I'm just
taking
saying that
those-
in the plan, in the table layout plan, we need to mark outlet locations.
and we need to,
And don't tape the cords to the floor. That was a hazard.
It was a very big tripping hazard, yeah.
but didn't we manage to tape the cords to the floor?
They didn't stay.
The floor was dirty enough to tape wouldn't stick.
And then they had the issue is we taped them all down and then some of the registers didn't work. They didn't come up with any kind of a display that you could see. And so, we need to do a better job of making sure that all equipment functions in an appropriate way.
So we need to add that to the Thursday list, is check all of the electrical outlets.
When we do the layout plan, we need to know where every single one is. Even if it's one we don't anticipate using, every outlet needs to be on the square of diagram of the room. You lay out this thing, you mark all your outlets, and then you can begin to work on that because we need to plan for cords.
Okay, that's committed.
And if we're talking about
if we're talking
layout,
about
I don't know if this
layout,
is
I don't know if
appropriate.
this is the appropriate time, but there were a lot of, not a lot, but there were people who were skipping the tallying and coming straight to the cashiers, and I was trying to corral them, and I'm sure other people were too.
I was trying to
So I
catch,
think the layout was a little problematic.
we had
or
planned for
at-
signage and the signage didn't appear. There was supposed to be a sign that said, a sign they could see that said start here. And what I had to learn is where to position myself to get people going in the right direction. Because one place caught some and another place caught others. And so, getting the crowd in, we didn't have the volunteers. So I was in charge of the tally papers and I made tables and I made it my job to kind of corral people to do that. But yes, I did miss people, Annette.
No,
But they
I
came from all angles.
didn't
They
mean
came
it
from
was
all
one
angles.
person's problem. It was just partly maybe the lack of signage or just the way it was set up. I don't know if this is the appropriate time either, but I really think we need one place where people enter the building. I was trying to keep track of number of attendees and people were coming behind me
Well, they had too
and,
many
all different
entrances.
places, and it's very difficult. You can't count people when they're sat buying something either, because some people don't buy, they come. So there needs to be like one main entrance and not people coming in a variety of
And
doors.
with the Colorado building and the fine arts, that's possible.
Well, even if you have only two, you can get two people counting at each entrance, but you're right.
Mark, part of our problem was we have such a crush when we first open the doors. And that's where a lot of these problems develop, is we have all these people descending on us like locusts, and yeah.
The other problem we had was there were people that were not in the line. That was the main entrance. There were people that I think had been waiting there for over a half hour. In the meantime, people coming in from the other side and even trying to shop before we were open. And that was also and unfair. It was problematic and unfair.
Right, and then we
It
went out
caused a
of
lot of
time opening the doors.
With using the fine arts and the Colorado building, these things are controllable.
But I don't think we can count on getting those buildings. We just cannot count on
Let's
that.
be just real positive about it, because those are, we've used them in the past. And I'm sure that the extension office can
Help.
put our case forward in a way that will help. Right, Christine?
Yeah, Christine's probably busy doing her job. Oh, there
No,
she is.
that's fine. Sure, yeah, Marcia, I'll do my best. I mean, I really think
Yeah.
Colorado building will be, our first choice, and if it's at all possible, they'll give it to us. They will. They're pretty
Yeah.
accommodating.
Bonnie made a good point, and it's a problem we've had before. We did actually have signs that said, maybe, they may not have said start here, but the signs were taped to the tables. So they're not in people's view angle. And nobody looks down to see what the sign says. So that's a continuing challenge with how do we mount signs that people can see at eye level? The other thing we were planning to do this year that didn't work out was to have stand-ins or traffic cones like we had in 21. And that worked pretty well. So we need to make sure we have some sort of lines, more defined lines next year to corral people and direct them instead of it just being wide open, which is the way it was this year.
I would think that the extension office has some easels or something like that, that we could, put up that says start here or whatever we want to put.
Okay, another issue we have is that people left their post. I mean, we had machines malfunctioning, which makes for some confusion at the thing, but people in the cashiers left their post because there were slow periods or they were doing other tasks. And then what happened is we sent the people over there was no one there. And then that led up to a backup at someone else, because just because there's no one there doesn't mean as soon as you turn your back, someone isn't there. And so we really need to have people stationed at cashiers who are just going to sit there even through the slow times. They need to be assigned one job only, and that's where they sit, and that's where they, and that's
I
where they
apologize.
And this goes back-
I was that
I mean, I don't
person.
want to point any fingers. I just want to say that
I was that person, and I was
no, you
told
weren't.
away.
There were more than you, Marcia. There was more than you. It was
Yeah,
a problem.
I apologize.
It was a problem with the cashiers. Marianne stood there, but she was in charge of all of them. So if there was a problem at another one, she would get called away. And so we really need to have free volunteers who can just sit there and do the job.
Regarding the cashiers and all of that different thing, first of all, I don't think Catherine should have been a cashier. I think she should have been able to
Correct.
oversee the whole
Float.
thing. I'm wondering if we can, if we should, on the volunteers, have people actually volunteer for specific jobs so that they are responsible for that job. If they sign up, they know what they're signing up for and what times. Like I wore several different hats. I was a counter, and then someone else wanted to be a counter, and so I kind of jumped around. But I think that if you're given a specific job for a specific time period, maybe someone that's going to be there all day can be wears several different hats, but maybe that's something that we can change, because right now we just get a whole big number of people and maybe they don't feel as responsible for showing up either because they don't have a specific job that they're assigned.
And part of our challenge with that, and Christine, maybe you could hop in on this topic. The way VMS is structured is you can sign up for a shift or an event, but you can't specify what you're going to be doing there. So I can sign up to say I want to work the 8 to 11 shift, but I can't through VMS say I want to be a cashier or I want to be a floor worker. Christine, is there any way to add that kind of functionality to the VMS sign-in system?
I think that I can. It just makes it so that there's a lot more items on that day, but I could do that. I'm trying to think it's still kind of new to me, but I'm trying to think if there's a checkbox inside that we could use where they sign up for the shift and then check inside which item they would want. Let me do a little research on that. But I know that I could make individual lines to say shift number 1, cashier, shift number 1, floor person, shift number 1, door counter, shift number 1, whatever, we can definitely do that and have 1, 2, 3, 5 people at each of those positions. It just gets real long when they start signing up.
Another option is that as soon as they do that, we could probably have them be sent a file automatically? And then we could send them like a SurveyMonkey checklist in which they just check off what they want. And all of that goes back to whoever's coordinating volunteers. And they go, oh, look at this, Bonnie wants to work, tally. Bonnie wants to, float.
If we do it on VMS, you don't want 10 cash register people. You need to limit it. And you can do that on VMS.
Mark has a suggestion.
Yeah, I like where we're going with this topic. Recently, I helped get some volunteers for the summer solstice event in Pueblo, helping Cynthia Ramu. And they had like a list of shifts and tasks available where they needed volunteers. I sent out, emails and I got the volunteers and I sent them a Google survey with their basic information like name, phone number, email, so we could communicate with them and then ask them, when are you available in terms of times with assigned job tasks? So they would see a short survey, they would select what time they're available, what task they wanted to do, and then that came to me in terms of in a spreadsheet that is easily downloadable in an Excel sheet with everything organized. So that would be my recommendation, is just to send some folks a Google survey, and I'm happy to work with anybody to create that. I think that just makes it easy to see what and who is available for what shifts, what times, and then it gives our volunteers some empowerment to be placed where they want to contribute versus tasks that they may not have the capacity to do.
I agree,
think
Mark.
there's the lesson we need to take from this is that we need to engage more with our volunteers, whether it be a better VMS sign-in system, whether we supplement VMS with a Google survey, but there needs to be more communication between the volunteers and the committees in advance.
And I agree with that. And one other thing that happens with the volunteers is they sign up on VMS. I was trying to coordinate the volunteers, but really that was done mainly through Cherie. And so I never communicated with the individual volunteers, and maybe they didn't feel as responsible. So like Mark's help doing this kind of thing will maybe keep us on their radar and make them show up and also be more engaged in whatever task they have agreed to do.
Good. I think, is there anything else we want to say about volunteers? And
I would like to
Becca?
suggest that we have both Square and even if we have to purchase another machine, that we have both Square and cash at each register.
It turns out that when I took the registers back this time, the person we regularly deal with showed me a register they had just started having where it is a regular register, Square is already built into it. And, or maybe it's another credit card company, but the point is that credit card company it's already built into the register, so you don't have to have a separate device for it. And at least this year, if you agreed to do your credit card processing through them, you didn't have to pay to rent the machine. So that's not a lot of money. It's only $150 or $200, but the fact that it's integrated into one machine is great, because trying to, like I know Mary Ann's, she had a Square in her left hand and she had a cash register in her right, and it was crazy.
Well, you know, we didn't anticipate, because in the past we never took them. We said, well, most people know to bring cash. Well, as soon as they realized they had the option to pay with a credit card, they chose to keep the cash so they could use it to go get lunch. So we got a lot more credit sales. And I think we need to plan that we're going to get a predominance. I mean, a lot of young ones like my grandson and others I know, they don't even carry cash. They have a card. They use a card.
We had, I think in 21, we had almost equal amounts of cash and credit sales. This year, we had about 2/3 of our sales were credit and 1/3 was cash. So we're definitely moving to more of a digital payment society. So.
Okay.
Well, that's neat that we can get cash registers that are integrated.
Okay. Gosh, we've gone through everything on my list.
I just had one other idea about volunteers, and I don't know if this is a crazy idea, but especially for certain areas, maybe there should be some kind of little meeting or interaction with, you know, like for instance, if you're going to be a cashier, that you actually get to feel like what it's going to be like and have an input into something. I don't
That's
know.
what we did. That's what we did with advanced sales. The people that came to help set up got to pick their plan, and they went through the cash register, and that's where we did Mary Ann did her training.
Well, we offered training times and no one showed up, but then they weren't assigned jobs.
Correct.
I mean, if we had assigned jobs, we just said, if you want to be a cashier, you can show up. Well, nobody showed up. And then on the day of the thing, people showed up. Well, where would you like to work? Oh, I'd like to be a cashier. You know, so we need to.
No. Yeah.
So we really need to be, I love the idea that people who sign up get contacted. I like this Google survey. I think increasingly people are getting familiar with those. And if they don't respond to it, you know, the telephone always exists.
And, you know, I'd like to say something about the cashier thing. I know that Leah and I were both asked ahead of time, so we didn't hear anything about some kind of advance training, and but we already knew when we showed up that we were going to be cashiers. So it wasn't a matter of people showed up and you know, you want to be a cashier? Yeah, okay. So I'd just like to clarify that.
Well, it was, I mean, yes, I mean, in your case, that was true, but
It was
I'm just
true
saying
for
that
Leah,
wasn't
too.
true
It was
with
true
every
for-
volunteer that came in.
It was true for Leah too, but you just mentioned the cashiers is all. And
Right.
I think one thing that I'd like to say about volunteers, all the problems that we had at the sale were because we didn't have enough volunteers.
Correct.
So maybe there needs to be more of an outreach to the master gardeners, maybe from Shed in addition to Sherry, talking about what a great thing this sale is and, you know, how much it benefits the master gardeners in the program. Just to really get them to be interested in participating in the sale. Now, maybe that's something that you've done in other years. I didn't see a lot of outreach as a trainee, you know, about the plant sale. I think maybe I got a couple of emails. So, yeah. So anyway,
Yeah, the emails were probably from Cherie.
from Cherie, yeah.
Did reach out to the apprentices and the master gardeners and send specific emails requesting their help. And actually, I think Cherie sent something every month for like 3 or 4 months. But
Yeah.
I do agree that once, I think if people sign up for a specific job, that'll help a lot because then we can know how to interact with them. And I think there needs to be, after they sign up, there needs to be more communication. Like that was an area that didn't really happen and has never happened. If someone signed up to volunteer, you know, I don't know, maybe we could even have a pre-sale little party or something like Catherine likes to host.
Okay, I put down here on our notes that handicapped accessibility, because we just know that's an issue, but I want to make sure it's recorded. And the other issue we had were there were several people who made very large purchases. And so maybe they brought a little cart. So they're taking out these plants 2 or 3 times, you know, and they made 5, 6, 7 trips. And I mean, you know, the building will, the new build, if we get one of those other buildings, the trips won't be so long and so far, you know, to go all the way across, then all the way back over to the parking, because the entrance was in the opposite side of the hall from where they could get the carts out. And having the large carts available, or someone who can help people get, you know, just manage those carts and get people out. But somehow we've got to get some way. I just put down carts to help people who make large purchases transport it to their car.
That Cherie sent out an invitation to come help with the plant sale to 4-H clubs, and we've had them come before. 4-H members come and they'd help ferry plants out. They would take the wagons out, bring them back, and that sort of thing. The wagons did help, but going up that ramp was not good with those wagons because you had handicapped people trying to come in. And Christine, that's another argument, is that I got a lot of complaints from people about handicapped accessibility, and that they said State Fair should do something about that. Well, different building, yes. State Fair could do something about that. We'll see.
I think part of the changes that are occurring in terms of the statute or legislation, whatever it was, that allow State Fair to do its renovations this year, probably handicapped access will be one of the things that money is spent on, because their handicapped access is seriously outdated in terms of how buildings are designed today. So
Yeah.
hopefully that'll change.
Even their big hall that they use for graduations is not friendly to handicap.
Yeah. Okay, anything else anybody wants to say about how we did? I want to say this. We made a little bit, our gross sales, gross receipts were higher than they were last year, but our costs were almost proportionally exactly the same. So I think our net was maybe $500 more than it was last year. So I think we raised a ton of money since we can't give it away fast enough. We're not giving it away as fast as we're earning it. So I think that what we're doing is great financially. But one of the things I want to think about is whether or not we should move the date of the plant sale to be a week earlier. So it'd be the first Saturday in May instead of the second.
That is a point.
We
And
won't have a
however,
we do it the
competition.
first Saturday, we will hopefully not conflict with cause every time.
We've
I
had,
think that
that's
sounds like a
been
good idea
historic.
also.
Yeah.
I think I had some other idea, but I'll have to think what it was.
The problem is that we have those cold snaps around the 10th of May.
Yeah.
And that does, people take their little plants home and put them out. They freeze, and I wonder how Derek did with his, because
I bought plants and I don't always get them all planted right away. And I just covered them with sheets and stuff, and there was no problem. So I think even though there might be cold snaps, I think it might be good to have it 1 week earlier.
We'll be closer to people getting their checks.
The other thing is that, at least some people who have things they're doing with family that weekend. And it's a lot of times, especially if your family's if you're mom or you are a mom and you're in a separate city, you may go for the weekend to be with your family. And so those people are out of town, so they can't buy things.
Well, but we also get Mother's Day shopping.
Yeah.
But we could also, like, the things people are buying are things that probably have to be planted unless they buy a house plant. And we could promote it somehow, like people can buy it for their mom and then they can help their mom plant it on the, before Mother's Day or something. So there's some things like that. The other thing we haven't talked at all about is our website. And I think if we want to attract more people, we have to have an up-to-date website. We have to have some kind of person that's willing to do, posts, kind of like what the farmers marketeers, that they had different people that did Facebook, but like I'm in an organization and we have a dedicated Facebook person. And then we did update our website, and then we pay someone just for 3 hours per month to kind of make sure that we're not, to interact with GoDaddy or whoever. But slowly we have renovated our website. So I just think that we need more social media posts, things on Instagram and Facebook to really promote, and have a site where people can go and maybe see what does Shed do, and we could have testimonies from our different people that we've given money to, things like that.
And don't forget Nextdoor,
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And that's one reason why I am grateful to have interacted with the group. My background is in marketing and public relations, and this is right at my wheelhouse. So I'm happy to continue the conversation. I don't expect we'll get all the social media pieces solidified right now, but just know that I am your guy when it comes to, I'm looking at the website right now. It's a solid foundation for a website. The key to just getting people to know, like, and trust any brand is just consistency. And I say just because that's easier said than done when we're all managing our different lives and tasks. That's why being a marketing professional is its own thing. So just know that I'm here to help with social media, content creation, and if we need to update any language as appropriate. The website and the brand stuff is always a work in progress. So just know that I'm here to provide that support where we need it.
I think that's great, Mark. Thank you. Like when I last visited our website, I think the things on it were from 2020 or through 2021. I mean, there should be something that said something about the plant sale, you know, in 2022, but there was nothing. So we definitely, I think we definitely need help with that. And I think it would help with getting more people to come to the sale and possible help with vendors, you know, different things like that.
It would help beyond that, because it would give us a presence. If we are looking for people with good projects, a better presence on the media would help us attract people who are doing good grant projects. I think it would also help us recruit more volunteers to help us out. Catherine, did you invite this man to join our board?
I had a nice chat with Mark earlier in the week, and I asked him to come sit with us, and I said, we have an opportunity, we have openings on the board, and we are in need of a treasurer, and Mark's undergrad degree is in business, so I figured that probably meant he could balance a checkbook, and he agreed he could balance a checkbook. And so I'm hoping Mark will join us. I don't want to put him on the spot to say, do it, or
even if that position stayed, just to have the better public relations and the marketing, that is a valuable resource on the board. And, you know, there we can still, and with his skills, we be able to recruit us a treasurer so that he can dedicate more time to this other.
I agree, like having someone like without expertise, he knows different people who maybe freelance or whatever in different areas,
but just putting it out on their website that we need a
progress,
treasurer.
but we
You
can
know, do you want
definitely
the
get our
garden?
main
Do you want
page on our website, at least looking a little bit up to date. So.
well, I think, again, this is an opportunity for some committee work. One of the things I'd like to do is expand our membership in our board beyond Master Gardeners. We've been a fairly parochial and insular institution or organization, just as the nature being the fiduciary agent for Master Gardeners. We've been pretty narrowly focused, and I'm hoping that over the next couple of years, we'll be able to broaden our outreach and have people who are interested in gardening and interested in horticulture, but who are interested in it, but have not gone through the Master Gardener program, or perhaps to get people involved with SHED, and then they become Master Gardeners. But we definitely need to expand our pool beyond just the 50 people who pay their Master Gardener participation dues every year. So I think this has been a terrific meeting. Is there anything that anyone would like to say in closing? Other than thank you, I'd like to say thank you to all of you guys. You know, in 21, I was wiped out for 3 months after the plant sale because I didn't delegate, because I didn't know how to delegate or whatever. And this year, it was so much better this year because everybody pitched in, and it really made a huge difference. And it gave me a lot of inspiration and energy to keep going. So thank you to all of the board members and to people who aren't board members, but who participated and volunteered. And you're just a terrific group, and I'm really honored to get to be your leader. So thank you.
And I want to thank.
And I thank Catherine for her leadership. You know, she really helped all of us keep on track, and all the work. I can't imagine how many hours she spent on all those spreadsheets and whatnot, you know, and, you know, vendor relations. I mean, she kind of wears all hats in some way. And so I think that's really a lot due to her leadership.
Thank you, Annette. Okay, it sounds like we've covered everything. I am going to adjourn this meeting, and we will see you the second Friday in August. I hope all your plants stay alive. You keep your garden watered. Maybe put some shade on some of them. Maybe by next August, we'll be able to talk about the tomatoes we're harvesting. And that'll be fun. So I'll see everybody in August. Thanks a bunch. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.